Howdy, my name is Evan.
I'm Jonathan.
And I'm Connor.
And we're so excited to welcome today's edition of Tuesday Talks as we discuss Pastor Mark's sermon over the Beatitudes, specifically Luke 6:17 through 26. And this passage is all about trust. And I know this is something you may have had lots of sermons about because we can all grow in our trust of the Lord. But specifically, Mark kind of narrowed down, and we want to narrow down a little bit too, about trusting God with our finances, which is just harder than anyone can imagine, especially when we're facing the climate we're in right now. It's really hard to say, Lord, I trust you with finances when the world seems crazy. So I just want to open up and just kind of discuss when has been a time where you have struggled or had to trust God with your finances. Say, Lord, you're king of my finances. I trust you with it, even though it's a little crazy.
Yeah. Oh man, I can think of a lot of them. I actually think I'm currently going one. Just in my industry, there's a lot of layoffs going on, and there's a lot of insecurity. You don't know what's going to happen, and so it can be hard a little bit just to know, not know what your future will hold.
Yeah.
And on top of that, just if there's debts to pay or bills, that can all just get to your head in a weird way. And so it's really hard to know what's my future. I'm a little uncertain there. It's hard, yeah. It definitely gets to you, and sometimes I just have to think about it and be like, okay, it's a numbers game. I have to switch my head off of it for a second, because stressing about it more and more won't help.
Yeah.
It doesn't do much unless you're actually actively doing something to change the situation.
Yeah, you're just getting that spiral of it's not going to work.
Yeah. I can think back to a time a few years ago where I was, just due to some poor spending patterns and just unhealthy habits, into a pretty severe amount of debt. And I was doing my best, because I was ashamed of that debt, to hide it away from everybody. I wasn't reaching out to people. I wasn't talking to anyone. I was just suffering through, just paying away what I could and being, pretty much poor all the time. Because I felt so ashamed for that debt. But after praying on it a lot, I really realized that it's not what the Lord wants us to do. The Lord wants us to bring the things that we are ashamed of to Him and into the light.
Yeah.
That way they can be made new.
Yep.
And realizing that, just saying, you know what, Lord, I'm gonna trust you with this, and taking it to people that I had difficult conversations with about my habits was really hard. But it's paid off so much in the long run, and just trusting the Lord to just take that. I guess it's less about finance really, but take that burden of finance.
Yeah.
And say, I trust you. I trust where you're going to go with this. It was one of the most freeing experiences, and it's,
Yeah.
still lives in my head.
Yeah.
Always will.
Well, it's crazy. I think there's a lot of story in there about even bringing in community and how the Lord frees in that moment. I know for me, just in general, right? Going into ministry is a trust with God of your finances. You are saying, Lord, okay, I know I'm doing this for your kingdom. My youth pastor, I talked to him once about going into ministry, and he goes, if you're going to ministry for the money, you're an idiot, right? You're in the wrong profession.
Confirm.
Yeah, right. But it's just such an act of faith. But I know for me, it's hard sometimes as I look at my friends that are very successful in their going and starting their careers, getting really cool jobs, and I know for myself, I'm like, Lord, I know I could be doing stuff like that, and you have to just remind, but I know, Lord, you've called me to this. I know I could be doing this, and if I want to make money my goal, that could be it. I'm not saying that my friends do that, but they've been called to that field. I have to remind myself, okay, Lord, you've called me to this, and I know that you, in calling me into what I'm doing, you're also going to provide for me.
Yeah.
You wouldn't call me into ministry if you weren't also going to provide means for me to survive while doing ministry, right?
Yeah.
I think we could all agree that if God called someone to something and then was going to starve them, it's probably not the good God that we know, right?
Yep.
And so I have to remind myself, okay, Lord, I have to remind myself, okay, you might not provide me the excess of needs, but I don't need that, right? You're going to provide exactly what I need. And so that's been a faith act of just trusting, Lord, in my calling to ministry. Okay, this is the life you set before me, and that's great. I'm going to have what I need, and that's more than enough,
Yeah.
But you can hear even in that dialogue, it's hard. It is hard to go, Lord, okay, I trust you with these finances. And I don't know for y'all, from your personal experience, why is it so, out of everything we trust, I think the one that we most practically we can see in our lives we don't is money. A lot of other stuff we can talk about, trust God with our lives, but until we're at death's door, we might not have to really show that. But money we can actively show through tithing weekly or monthly, and yet we actively choose to hold that. Why is money that hard one for us to give up?
Yeah. Oh man. I think okay. So I'll tell a story first. When I was younger, my sister pulled me aside because I was worrying about how to pay for an upcoming mission trip here at the church. And I was like, it literally got to my head. And I think you make a really good point. A lot of it is super mental. It's in the mindset. And she pulled me aside. She took me. She gave me this I think it was a slab of wood. And on that slab of wood it said Jehovah Jireh, which translates to God will provide.
Yeah.
And I took those words really to heart. And so one of the ways I look for changing that mindset, because again, most of it is mindset, is I remember, yep, God will provide. And then I look back at the past and see, has God ever let me down? Have I ever been struggling with finances before?
Yeah.
Sure, there have been times that might have been harder than others, but I've never gotten to the point where I've like fully struggled and thought, I don't have enough. I won't have enough for the next month.
Yeah.
And so take that past results predict future sometimes. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes it's still going to be hard. But I keep that mindset going.
Yeah.
And I learn to trust him that way. And again, it's still hard. A lot of things, life can hit you in so many ways, but just keeping that mindset will keep you optimistic and will keep your it will strengthen your trust in God as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah, I think a big part of the reason people struggle with like to trust God with finance as much as they do is because it's one of the few things in our lives that we can tangibly see and interact with when
Yeah.
it comes to trusting God.
Yeah.
Like you can't see prayer life.
Sure.
You can't see sickness slowly being healed in the body.
Sure.
You can't see, relationships forming. Like, yeah, you
In
can.
real time,
and-
yeah.
but it's a process.
Yeah.
Whereas in the modern era, any second of any day, you can pull out your phone, open up your bank app, and see
Yeah.
exactly how much money you have, and you can in your head go, oh, there's still 22 days until the next paycheck.
Yeah.
So it's something you're constantly just checking, and because you're checking on it so much,
Yeah.
you feel like it's really important, and it's either not enough or you're doing great. But either way, you keep a thumb on it.
Yep.
Yeah.
At all times. Where in a lot of other areas of our lives, we're very laissez-faire, where we just let God take control and we just kind of take our thumb off of it because it's easier to just let him have those things than to have the things that we
Yeah.
check on day in and day out.
Yeah, that's so good. I think there's to me there's two big components, right? And first up is just surviving. Like obviously to survive and be able to provide for yourself or a family, you need to have some sort of income. So it's really hard when you get that and like this is just enough for the month. I'll also go, okay, I'm going to give 10% of this away.
Yeah.
It's really, really hard to go, I need to feed my kids. Lord, I trust you that this, whatever amount 10% for you is, that this will be used for your kingdom and I still will have enough from this rest to make sure my kids are fed.
Yeah.
I can see that as so hard. I'm not currently married, but about to be married. And that's hard for me to think ahead. Lord, we join this union, I need to provide it and be for her. I trust that even if I take this bit away, you will provide from this little, right? That the fishes and the loaves type thing, right?
Yeah.
But the second one, and honestly, this is where a lot of issues come from. Money is also status, right?
That's
It
true,
is
too.
so easy in our world to find your worth in the amount in your bank account. Right, because it's tangible. You can look at it every single day and go, man, I'm up right now. I am good. I am thriving. Right? It's not even about always what I can get with that, but just having that resource and feeling like I matter. Because that's what money tells us, how much valuable we are to society.
It's also a meter of stability.
Sure.
Yeah. So you can use it as a comfort blanket.
Yes.
When it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love what you just put there, comfort blanket. Because if I really had to look there and say, okay, why is money so hard? It's because our enemy wants it to become an obstacle, right?
Yeah.
And he wants it to become an obstacle because he wants you to trust in money and not in him. He doesn't. Our enemy wants us to trust in money and not in God.
Yeah.
Let me clarify that when I say him. Because if you have all this money in the world, you can say, I have got this. I don't need the Lord. I don't need to trust in the Lord because I have resources.
Yep.
Right? And kind of a little bit of rabbit trail here, but it's so interesting when you see what Americans picture of the happy person is. It's someone who has means and is successful, but oftentimes those people are miserable.
Yeah. Oh,
right? And then we look at other countries where, man, even their wealthy are considered impoverished sometimes, right? And they're joyful, filled with spirit because they have to trust in the Lord, right? And I'm not being anti-capitalist or anything here, but this is something I notice is that the more trust we put in money,
Yep.
the way our enemy wants us to do it, the less joy we have in the Lord because we can trust on these things that man has built,
Yeah.
right?
And that's infallible.
Yeah.
Or that is
It is fallible.
It's fallible.
God is infallible, but
That are-
money is fallible.
Yeah, yeah.
Because as soon as you see that stock drop, your life's ruined.
Yep.
As soon as you see that number go away, or you have this big incurred thing where you're no longer stable, your tabletop for everything goes away. When if you put it on Christ and the Lord, you never moves.
Yeah.
As
Yeah.
much as that bank account goes up and down. So I don't. Obviously, we could go on all day about why it's hard, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it is.
We all know it's hard.
We
It is
all
hard.
know it's hard. But I think maybe all of us have seen in some way in trusting the Lord of something, we've seen him bless or provide in a way we didn't thought. So I don't know if you'll have stories about that where the Lord has provided in your trusting before with money.
Yeah, honestly, going back to that story of Jehovah Jireh, in the end, I stopped stressing about that. And I think I did a few fundraising letters, did a few volunteer hours.
Yeah.
But like, I did those without even like thinking, oh, will this be enough to make the money? And by the end of that, through God and through other people, yeah, I absolutely had enough to go on that mission trip.
So cool.
Applying that to, more practical life, real life skills, same thing applies. If you take your mind off of it and let God take control, again, you're still aware of it. Like, you're not just like, oh, I can spend anything and everything I want.
Yeah.
But if you do let God take control and you don't let that stress get to you, yeah, I haven't, like, looking back at past results, I haven't seen anything that's really, like, blocked me, and
Yeah.
I haven't had enough to provide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And similarly, going back to my story, taking that to community opened up just a pool of resources, whether they were educational or financial or
Yep.
whatever, just to help me out of the situation I was in.
Yeah.
And get me back on my feet with no expectation of, like repayment or anything. I mean, that community is, I doubt they would have responded the way they did had they have not been in faith.
Yeah.
It's really easy, to go, I don't want to say it's easy, but if you went to your friends and said, hey, I'm in trouble with that, they're like, oh, that sucks, man.
Yeah.
Like, we'll help you get out of that.
Yeah.
Whereas going to your faith community, the reaction tends to be so much more, it's hard, don't get me wrong, because you want these people to think highly of you. But pouring your heart out, being upfront, just the outpouring of support just that comes from the church being the church
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
phenomenal. And the Lord provided a lot.
Yeah.
And by extension is still providing today. I mean, who knows where I'd be if I was still in that mess.
Yeah.
It's so good. I think one for me that I think of going into college, there was a lot of stuff happening in my family that made financial stuff uncertain. And it was a very scary time. I didn't want to go into student loans and debt like that.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about jobs and everything. And I was like, going to freshman year, having a job. And it was very uncertain. But I remember when I was in high school, I was blessed to be part of an intern at my church. And I specifically worked, my role was with our special needs ministry in our youth, but I did a lot of us over youth, but special needs was the big tie through. And when I was going to college, my one question to all the churches, because it was so near and dear to my heart, was, do you have a special needs ministry? Like, I want to be a part of a church that has a special needs ministry. Like, that is just, it's been so near my heart for 4 years.
Yeah.
It's so important to me. And found a church and they go, well, we just kind of started one. It's relatively new, but we're formalized it. We have students, so we really want to make it a thing.
That's awesome.
And got connected with them. And I was like, this is what I want to do. And I remember they're like, okay, you want to serve with us, you have to come and do paperwork. And I thought this was just a background check. Obviously, if you work with children, especially children that are vulnerable like that, you need very good protection and wisdom to have background checks. That's just wisdom.
Yeah.
But then I was in the interview, or it was past the interview, so I was doing the paperwork. And they asked me, okay, do you have a bank routing number? And I go, what for? Like, what do you need a bank routing for? You're just going to take my tithe out of my bank account? And they go, no, we're hiring you to be a buddy in our special needs department. So it was this weird thing of just like the Lord putting this passion on my heart and me seeking to serve, and it ended up being a job. So
Wow.
I was a part-time worker at this church with their special needs buddies and also did other childcare stuff with them. But it was totally, I was not looking for a job at the time. I kind of knew I was going to need income. But I wasn't actively looking for it. And the Lord's like, okay, your passion to serve is actually going to be a part-time job for you. And it wasn't crazy. I wasn't like, there's a minimum wage in Texas, so I'm not like rolling in it. But it was enough for me to go to college and have money to be with friends and a little bit of date money when I needed date money and stuff like that. So
Sure.
It was enough for what I needed and not anymore. It was not any more than that, but it was enough. And it was this weird blessing. I just remember being in that office and going like, oh, this is a job. I didn't know. And the beauty of it too is I was worried about getting a job and like affecting school hours, but I was already going to be serving at the church.
Right.
So I just ended up serving
And getting paid.
yeah, and then not that's why I did it. I would have done it anyways. And actually later on, they moved that role into a non-paid position. They could have grandfathered me, but I said I don't need it. I will volunteer. I would do this anyways. It was a blessing when it was paid, but I don't need it to be paid anymore. But that's just one thing that always comes to my mind. This passion for serving in this, and the Lord said, "No, I'm actually going to compensate you for this time for doing that," which is such a sweet God's through line through my life in that moment. So
I think
it's really cool.
Both of those stories really tend to show how we as humans can often underestimate both people and communities'
Amen.
love and outreach, and
Amen.
also God's love and outreach. for
Amen.
us.
Yeah.
Because it's putting trust in those where He'll provide.
Yeah.
But if we don't actually take that first step to put that trust in, that will be harder. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a reason that the church is called the hands and feet of, Christ, the body of Christ.
Yeah.
Because, yes, God absolutely has the power to intervene and do whatever he wants
Yeah.
in your life, in this world. But 99.999% of the time, the way he intervenes is through community.
Yeah.
So if you're living in isolation, if you're living in fear, if you're living in shame, that's the enemy holding you back from getting that intervention from
Yeah.
God.
I love that.
And that's a really easy thing to forget.
And
Yeah.
you'll just keep spiraling down. Yeah.
That's so good. That's so good. But I think we can all agree from this conversation you hear from us, and you probably agree online watching as well, that it's hard to trust your finances. We understand that, and we understand that this climate we're in maybe make it harder.
Yeah.
But I just ask this, that maybe this is the week that you just need to take that little step of faith. I'm the first time I wrote my tithe, both when I was in high school and when I had a full-time job, was probably the hardest time I ever wrote a tithe, right? And now that I've done it and it's become habit, it's easy because I never see that money as mine.
Yeah.
Right? So I just encourage you, if you're not someone who currently tithes, I'm not saying give us your money or anything like that, but I promise you it's freeing. And just grows your trust in the Lord. I'm not telling you to tithe, not only because it benefits the body, as Connor's talking about. The church is able to run and function because of tithes. And it's also able to bless other ministries and other people and see God's kingdom move across the world because of tithes. Your money becomes part of it.
Yeah.
Your money becomes part of God's work. But also, it is an act of faith that grows your trust in the Lord and grows then your joy in the Lord because you trust in His provision. So it's an act of worship. And so I encourage you, if you're not ready for the full 10%, that's between you and the Lord. You're asked to give and tithe generously from where the Lord has called you to give. But if you aren't currently doing it, what is that level the Lord is asking you to tithe? And I promise it'll be a blessing to you more than you can imagine. It's not about prosperity or you give this, you're gonna win the lottery the next day. No, it's about living in God's joy. And I promise you, more of God's joy will be there when you trust Him, even with your finances.
Yeah.
So we understand this is hard, and we invite you to have conversations with people around you, to be in the community, whether it's a life group or talk to pastors, because it is a hard thing, and I don't want to act like I have the answers or preaching to you by any means. I am in the same boat as you. But we encourage you in this. And if you want to be part of a community, we gather and worship together at Chapel Hill every single Sunday, 9 a.m. for a classic service, if that's more your style of worship, and 10:30 for modern worship. We'd love to see you here. We'd love to get you plugged in. If you want to know more about Chapel Hill, you can check out all the other videos on the website or see us online on our website. Ring the notification bell and keep up with our videos if you want to be part of our community online. And please come join us in person and see the joy of the body of Christ together. So God bless y'all, and we'll see y'all soon.
Take care.
Thanks.